Thanks a lot. I'm going to try and just share a few thoughts on what I've learned. I've learned a lot, actually, over the last 6 years. I went in with a healthy amount of naivety. It's amazing how you can be no longer young and still naive, which is probably a good quality to hold on to. I see lots of people who are good sort of friends and former colleagues in the room as well. So it's great to see you all here. It's a real treat. And I said to Axel that no questions are off limits as far as I'm concerned, and he promised to hold me to account on that. Because it's just if I've learnt anything that hopefully can be of use to one or two people in the room, that's my intention this evening. If you move into a big company, and from the outside, I think when I joined IKEA, and IKEA had a long track record on environmental and social issues before I joined, but I think the important thing first is to understand the context. And if you think, I think context is key in some ways. So some businesses can be genuinely less bad. They might be able to be, they can have a really strong ambition to be, 20% less bad in 10 years' time than today. Personally, I think it's important that we have businesses striving hard to be less bad. But in our crowded planet, we actually have to look at businesses that can make a genuine, full and total contribution to society. That's what I believe in. I think we need to repurpose capitalism. We need businesses that generate true long-term value for their customers, for the environment, and for society. So I think it's important to understand what's the business you're moving into. Is it a business where that you're going to help them be a lot less bad? And that, if you understand that, that's okay. That's a context. But if you want to be part of a purposeful business that can create true long-term value and has the potential to do that, that's got more potential, significantly. So context is key. You can't make fundamentally unsustainable businesses whose very products and business models are unsustainable. You can't magic them into being sustainable. Obviously, the other thing is it's easier in a business that's up for change. And generally, that's businesses which have some forward dynamic, which have some aspiration around market leadership. That's part of context as well. I would also say you really need to go in with a mindset which is you don't know everything. Far from it. And I think we were discussing on the run-up to today, sort of, do you need a 100-day plan or something? Well, you probably do. Maybe you need a week-long plan. You could have a 100-day plan. But your 100-day plan is not to come in as the smartest person in the universe and tell people in the business who've been in there 20, 30 years how to run the business. You have to go in with some humility, learn the business inside out, understand what drives the business and makes it tick. And so probably your 100-day plan, maybe even your 200-day plan, is really learn the business. A good friend of mine who'd moved businesses, when I asked his advice, he said, Steve, you've got 2 ears and 1 mouth. And people who know me well may not believe that, but to go in and think you're going to listen more than you talk to start off with. And that may be counter to the expectations in senior leadership roles, but I think it's really important. And Daniel referred to this as well. I really have come to believe that there's a power in, going all in sounds a bit of a platitude, but having powerful, transformative goals and targets, and wherever possible, have them as a binary outcome or 100% targets. And I'll give you an example. I actually said this. I did a TED Talk a few years ago in 2013, and it was interesting. What are the things that's sticky? When you say something, people forget 90%, maybe 95% of what you say. Maybe if you're really bad, it's 100% of what you say. But what's the 1% or the 5% or the 10% that stays with people? And it was the power of 100% is really powerful. And we did this when we realized we started to do it around a whole series of things in the business. So one of them was LED transformation. When we initiated it, in IKEA, there's a large lighting business. So selling, at that point in time, it was CFLs and halogens and some hundreds of thousands of LEDs, but the LEDs were early. So this is going back 5 years. And we said, actually, let's flip the business. Let's eliminate halogens and CFLs. And when you think it's not like you've got one type of bulb, you've got hundreds of different luminaires, lots of business partners, lots of different ways of developing lights and selling lights, complex supply chains. So it's not a simple decision to do that. I requested a business case. 3 months later, the team came back with a business case. We sat with the leadership of the business. We took a decision to eliminate halogens and CFLs. Immediately the next week, we stopped an investment in slightly better CFLs because we weren't going to be selling them down the line. All of the effort in the business went to understanding how do we create LEDs that are incredibly long-lasting and incredibly affordable and are the next best thing to daylight. So now you can get an LED. I mean, last year we sold 79 million. So from hundreds of thousands to 79 million, we will sell 500 million LEDs by the end of 2020. It's been fantastic for the business, actually. It's driven the business well. But it's also those 500 million LEDs, over their lifetime, they'll save like the annual emissions of a country like Sweden, about 20% more than Sweden, actually. So it has a meaningful sustainability impact. And we go from an LED that was 10, 12 euros for one LED to launching an LED that's a 99-cent LED that will last 20 years. So we'll be, even Daniel will have passed on the catalytic role in the crowd in 20 years' time. If you think of as a product, it's fundamentally better. But that's the power of going all in. We did the same thing with renewable energy. But anyway, after I did the TED Talk, I came back to the business and I suddenly thought, what targets have we got that are not 100% targets? Where am I guilty of hypocrisy? And so we had a big conversation in the team. We realized we had a 50% FSC target. And this is based on good people in the business building it from ground up. So for certified wood, we said we'd get to 50% by 2017. And all of the other wood would be identified, where it came from. We sell a lot of wood. It could go from here to Beijing in logging trucks. So it's not a simple task from 42 different countries. A highly complicated business of getting it all certified. We worked with the team for a year to then set a 100% target for 2020. And the power of that meant that actually by 2015, we hit the 50% target. Because we eliminated doubt, we took the option of not being certified off the table in the long term. It was absolutely clear what success looked like. And it was a great simplifier for everybody in the business, really. So if you go for a 50% target, more than 50% of people will be in the other 50%. 90%, way over 10%. Everybody's unique. Every business line's unique. Every business case is unique. Every product's unique. Every supply chain's unique. Everybody, because change is difficult, it's easy to not do anything. The status quo is always easier. So the power of 100% is a really big learning for me. Sometimes you need incremental targets, and they're okay in the background. The big changes you want to drive, you have to do it with ambition. And if you think about it, many businesses today are in this difficult situation of they're trying to develop a new business line and they're trying to defend their legacy businesses. It's a really difficult thing to do. From what you're leading, your volume of revenue is coming from your legacy business. Your future revenue is coming from your new business. Where do you drive it in that? When you've actually made a very clear choice, you can drive change, innovation, motivation, and outcomes much faster. Purpose. Purpose is really important. And when I was in the climate group, I had a friendly CEO coach, Gordon Starr. And Gordon's contribution to climate change hopefully was worthwhile, but he was coaching me. And he did it pro bono for a long time. And there was one time I was going to a really difficult meeting with a very senior global entrepreneur and business leader, and then into his board. And I won't describe it because it's a sensitive one, but it was a very challenging one. I suddenly had a moment of being a Manchester State schoolboy, thinking, whoa, I'm not looking forward to tomorrow morning. And my good friend Gordon said, Steve, what are you? And he said, you're the CEO of the climate group. You're a global leader on climate change and business. what does the moment require of that role? And I think this is a good way, because most of us are probably nice people, and actually driving change is a hard thing to do. You're forcing people, you have difficult conversations, and to be present in those is difficult, I think, for most of us. But you have to think, what's required of the role that you have? So if you're a sustainability leader in whatever way, if you're driving change, you have to be the person. Your role, it requires you to drive changes, to take a stand. Now you need to do it with charm and persuasion and in language that the business understands. But if you don't take a stand with the role you have, you give everybody else permission to opt out. And that's a great way to hold yourself to account, because the roles that people have are important roles for the future of our businesses, of society, and you have to step up. And I think give yourself the permission to always take a stand and know it's required of you. The other thing with sustainability, it's got to be commercial. And it only scales if it's commercial. How do you make your business win, really? One of my colleagues at one point in time was trying to persuade some of our business colleagues to put solar on the roofs of somewhere where it had about a 100-year payback. I don't know if you can actually calculate really a 100-year payback. And I just said, please don't do that. We cannot, because you can take one-off projects where you do something like that, and it's somewhere, maybe, is it proof of concept? Not really. Is it greenwashing? Probably. It might be philanthropic. Is it good business? Probably not. So you have to find a way to make sustainability pay. Simple as that. Figure it out, because that's the only way it will scale for the business to do that. So it is about better products and services that drive growth. We looked at energy in the business in IKEA and said we have an uncontrolled cost around energy. We have uncontrolled costs around future carbon exposure. Let's turn energy into a profit center. Let's make ourselves energy secure. And then we've, in total, put about 1.5–2 billion euros into owning our own energy generation. And now, as I've said to my good friend, our CFO, it's a good strategy for the CFO and it's good for the CSO. You have to be able to do those two things. And if you think of, in a big business or a small business, change is a team sport. Probably tonight is maybe the only time I ever get introduced as a rock star, and I won't be singing later. But if you look in IKEA, once, it was about a year in, I introduced myself as co-responsible for sustainability with everybody else. And it sort of just fell out of my mouth I hadn't thought it through in advance. And after I'd said it, I realized it was incredibly true. And in a big business, you're contingent on everybody else. So if you're in a very senior role, if you're in the C-suite, in the executive team, you have big levers, but actually, you're dependent on everybody else pulling the levers with you. If they pull the levers against you, you never move them. So if you're doing, it could be something simple like, actually, the LED transformation. You have people in a factory in Germany or in a factory in China. On the factory floor, you have passionate people doing sales in a store. You have the lighting team designing it. If you're just in the simple thing of improving the waste performance in a store, you have the forklift truck driver who is actually involved in helping with plastics and cardboard recycling. Many people, and so change is a team sport, and success has many parents. You have to remember that, and I think, and be generous and humble in your leadership and acknowledging you need the whole business with you. Write strategies that are in the language of your business, if you're going to do them. Sometimes people's strategies look like, they look somehow disconnected. Either they fall into it's not about the core of what the business is doing, so it's some nice initiatives, but it's not about fundamental, the products, the business model, the true impacts on society. Or sometimes it can be, I've seen many plans where it's actually written by sustainability experts. It's not in the language of the business. So we made our strategy People and Planet Positive about helping customers live a more sustainable life at home, having products that save energy, waste and water, about making our operations completely sustainable through energy and resource independence, about helping the people and communities who participated in our value chain have a better quality of life. That's it. And it was, yes, then there's 50, 60, 70 complicated things underneath those with clear deliverables. But the headlines were, as a business, people understand operations, they understand people, they understand customers, and that's what we made it about. We set sales goals, so we set a sales goal for products that help people save energy, waste and water. When we put that in place, the first year we measured it was about a 600 million euro business. This year it's a 2 million euro business. Last year it grew more than 30%. So in my final exit conversation with our supervisory board, I said with is a growth driver for our business. It's an innovation driver for our business, and we're a stronger business today than we were without it. With greater revenues, that's the way we need to land it. And the products and services have to be fundamentally better. Let's not sell compromise to people. I think there's some challenges in this. If you look at our 9.6 billion people world and a consumer society and everything like that, how do we fulfill all of those people's needs? But I think it's actually through great choices, through great innovation, and through what the businesses of tomorrow. And last thing, I see a friend of mine, Vicky, over there. Actually, a long time ago, we were in Mauritius together, and we were volunteers in Mauritius, and there was a guy who went out there, Carl Jones. He went down to close. He was actually sent to close a project down doing conservation work, and this is my last thing before we go over to Axel, actually. But it stayed with me because we were a lot younger then, and Carl, as a relatively young guy, he basically, the Mauritian kestrel had been exposed to, as the rest of the wildlife of the island, to DDT spraying to eliminate mosquitoes. And it actually led to very thin eggshells for the Mauritian kestrel, and the kestrels were crushing the eggshells, so they were almost about to wiped out. Carl took the last few eggs into captivity. He wasn't briefed to do that. He was meant to close the project down. And he incubated the eggs, and now there's hundreds of Mauritian kestrels wide, and he's saved 6 or 7 other species by intervening. And on my last day of our 3 months, Carl sat me down and gave me a pep talk, and he was like, Steve, there's millions of things to be done out there, waiting to be done. Yeah, and don't wait to be asked. And if we look in our day jobs, if we look in the reach that we have, it doesn't matter where you are, there are things to be done. And I think all too frequently, unless responsibility is clearly assigned, it falls through the cracks. So don't wait to be asked. I've all actually said this. I've managed to avoid it, fortunately, but I've said I'd rather be fired for doing too much than disappointed at myself for doing too little. I think the truth is you want to be somewhere in the sweet spot in the middle of that. But I think you have to, if you're in our sort of roles, I think really go all in, be ambitious. There's a huge opportunities. And if you think of this century, it's going to be digitization, this sort of massive urban demographic shift, and sustainability that shape the business landscape and society. It's really, it's the 1 hour past midnight in the day of sustainability. We've got all of our working lives to throw at this. The younger you are, the more you've got to throw at this. And the opportunities will be rich. But go for it and bring your best selves to it, and I think we'll be remarkable in what we'll achieve together. Thank you.